I sat at that brunch table like nothing was wrong, stirring my coffee until the cream made a perfect spiral. But inside, I kept hearing one sentence over and over. She said you were controlling. And what came after that still doesn't sit right with me, does it? Before I share what happened next, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. It started like most things in this stage of life, small. My daughter Maddie was always the kind to pull away and then swing back, like a tide. But last fall, the water stopped coming in. She ghosted Thanksgiving, called in a flat voice on Christmas morning, and when I asked if she'd be coming home soon, she said, "We'll see, okay?" Not "I'll try." Not "I love you." Just "we'll see." I blamed it on her job. She was working at a boutique PR firm in Chicago, managing lifestyle influencers and celebrity chefs. Her world was fast, curated, and exhausting. I figured I was background noise to all that. But it was more than distance. It was disconnection and disinterest. When her best friend Tara came to town in January, I thought maybe I'd hear something that would reassure me. But that brunch at Garden Table turned into something else entirely. "She told me things were tense between you two," Tara said casually, slicing her French toast with too much focus. I didn't want to pry, but she said you were a little, overbearing? That word caught like a splinter in my throat. Overbearing. Controlling. Cold. All words I had once heard from my own mother and vowed never to become. I just smiled. The kind of tight smile you make when your soul is bleeding and nobody notices. Maddie and I had always had a push-pull relationship. She was sharp, ambitious, a little high-strung. I was more grounded, but admittedly set in my ways. Still, I had raised her mostly on my own after her dad moved 3 states away and forgot how birthdays worked. I was the one who walked her into every dance studio, paid for SAT tutors I couldn't afford, and let her sob into my lap when she didn't get into Columbia. But I also sometimes made dinner without asking what she wanted. I reminded her of rent prices when she spent $140 on Sephora. I told her to break up with a boy I knew would burn her out. So maybe I was overbearing. But I called it parenting. She stopped calling altogether in February. At first, I thought she was just busy. Then I saw her tagged in a friend's Instagram story at some rooftop launch party in Lincoln Park. She looked radiant, champagne in hand, smiling that PR smile that didn't touch her eyes. I texted her the next morning. Just a simple, "You looked beautiful. Hope you're okay." Nothing. By mid-March, I found myself walking past her old room with this weird instinct to open the door, like maybe she'd be there. The room was still frozen in time, like a shrine to the version of her that used to love Sunday pancakes and Gilmore Girls reruns. And then one night, I found the binder. It wasn't hidden really, just tucked behind an old stack of notebooks in her closet. It was one of those full-leather things from Target. At first, I thought it was a planner or maybe her high school resume. But when I opened it, I realized it was something else. A list. Actually, several lists. Each page had a year at the top: 2011, 2013, 2016. And under each year, dates and bulleted notes. Some simple, some painfully detailed. April 9th. Mom said I should eat more salad in front of Jack. Humiliating. May 19th. Mom forgot to pick me up after the ballet showcase. August 22nd. Told her I wanted to study art. She said, "That's not a real career." I sat there for an hour, reading each entry like a punch to the gut. Some I remembered. Some I didn't. Some felt exaggerated, like the way teenage girls dramatize their pain into permanence. Others hit too close to truth. It wasn't until I reached the very back that I found the entry that stopped everything. June 17th, 2022. The night I came home crying. Mom asked what happened. I said I didn't want to talk. She made tea anyway. She sat next to me anyway. She stayed. Even when I didn't speak, she stayed. A warmth flooded me, brief and flickering like candlelight. But it didn't erase the heaviness of the other pages. That binder wasn't a diary. It was a ledger. Proof that my daughter had been keeping score in silence. The thing is, you never think your child is going to see you as the villain. Not when you've poured everything into their future. Not when you've sat through ear infections and spelling bees and nights where you were so tired you forgot who you were outside of being mom. But here it was in ink and memory. My daughter had curated a list of my failures. Not for the world to see. Not for revenge. But for her. To survive me, maybe. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in the kitchen with the binder on the table, trying to figure out when I became the person she needed protection from. I didn't reach out. Not immediately. Because what would I say? Hey honey, found your pain binder. Wanna unpack that over brunch? Instead, I started cleaning. Deep cleaning. Like some kind of domestic repentance. I scrubbed grout. Reorganized closets. Donated 6 boxes of stuff to Goodwill. There's something about throwing out clutter that makes you feel like you're making emotional space too. But one afternoon, while going through the garage, I found a box labeled Dorm Room, 2015. Inside were old prints from her first art show at Northwestern. A soft watercolor of a woman sitting alone on a couch. The background faded into grays. The woman's face was a blur, but her hands, they were clenched tightly, like she was holding in something massive and wordless. On the back, in pencil, home isn't always safe, but sometimes it's where you learn how to fight. The revenge I felt when I first read that binder, the desire to call her and scream, "How dare you remember only the bad," started to crack. Because what if I had been so busy defending myself as a good mom that I'd missed when she stopped feeling safe around me? By April, I still hadn't heard from her. But then the package came. A small manila envelope with no return address. Just my name. Inside was a diary. Spiral-bound. Pink. The kind you get at a CVS checkout when you're 11 and furious at the world. But the handwriting inside wasn't from her childhood. It was from last year. First page. This is for when I'm gone. Not forever. Just away from her. So I can remember why I love her, even when I don't like her. My hands started to shake. I was not prepared for what came next. The diary cracked something open in me that the binder hadn't. Because this time, it wasn't a tally of mistakes. It was something messier. Softer. A collection of moments she hadn't said out loud. Ones she was probably ashamed of. Ones she knew she wouldn't remember clearly if she didn't write them down. March 4th. She called and left a voicemail. I didn't listen to it. I don't know why. It's easier to stay mad when I pretend she never reaches out. March 12th. I almost called her when the heater broke, just so I could hear her tell me to put on socks. I didn't, but I missed that. April 2nd. She sent me banana bread. I know that smell. I cried for 3 hours. I didn't text her back. Why didn't I text her back? My stomach twisted. I remembered that bread. I had baked it after a long day, wrapped it in parchment, and wrote a note that said, "Still your biggest fan." I didn't hear anything, so I figured she hadn't cared. But she had. She just hadn't known how to say so. Some entries were angrier. Raw. April 14th. She used to say I was dramatic. No, I was sensitive. She couldn't tell the difference. April 20th. I told her I was drowning once. She said, "Swim harder." I know she meant it to be encouraging, but it crushed me. April 23rd. I still think about the day she sold Grandma Lou's bracelet. Said we needed the money. I hated her for that. But now I kind of understand. That last one. I could feel it in my chest like a bruise. That bracelet was a raw memory. We were 3 months behind on the mortgage. I had to choose between losing the house or pawning something that had no practical value, but held emotional weight. I told Maddie it was just a thing. But I knew, even then, what that thing represented to her. The last piece of Grandma Lou she could hold in her hand. I thought she'd forgive me once she understood. Apparently, she hadn't. Not really. In between those stormy pages were moments of guilt. Flashes of vulnerability. Tiny windows into her emotional chaos. She missed me. She resented me. She didn't know how to come back. And somewhere deep down, neither did I. I started remembering things differently. Not from the lens of a tired mother who sacrificed everything, but through the aching filter of someone who maybe, unintentionally, taught her daughter that love had to be earned. Maddie had always been a performer. From the time she was 6, she wanted to make people proud. And I, with my sharp comments about posture, grammar, budgeting, boys, probably made her feel like she had to audition for affection. I thought I was helping her become strong. But what if I was just teaching her how to hide? In May, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Susan, Maddie's landlord. Apparently, she was 3 months behind on rent. Hadn't responded to emails or calls. Susan found my number on an old emergency contact form and was just reaching out before escalating it. My first instinct was anger. Why hadn't Maddie told me? Why hadn't she asked for help? And then the diary echoed back. It's easier to stay mad when I pretend she never reaches out. I thanked Susan, hung up, and wired the payment that afternoon. I didn't tell Maddie. I just left it alone. That night, I walked into her old room, sat on the edge of the bed, and let myself cry in the dark. The kind of crying that doesn't make noise. It just leaks out of you like something rotten finding a way to escape. I thought about all the things I taught her and all the ones I didn't. How to work hard, yes. How to save money, yes. But not how to sit with grief. Not how to ask for help without feeling shame. Not how to love someone imperfectly and still stay close. Maybe because I never learned those things either. The next morning, I finally listened to the voicemail I'd left her a month ago. My voice sounded unfamiliar. Too chipper. Too distant. Hey, sweetheart. Just checking in. Let me know if you need anything. No pressure. Love you. It was a performance. A mother trying to sound unbothered. Emotionally safe. But underneath the tone, there was something desperate. A woman begging for a reply without saying so. I deleted it. 3 weeks later, an envelope showed up. Not from Maddie. From her employer. Apparently, she had left her job. Quietly. No notice. Inside was a letter she'd written on company stationery. Not addressed to me. More like addressed to herself. It read, I don't want to spend my life curating smiles for people who never knew my real name. I'm tired of translating my pain into productivity. I'm not okay. And maybe that's okay. That was the last straw. I drove to Chicago the next day. Her building was beige brick, early 2000s, 2 flights up. The buzzer didn't work. I knocked, waited, and knocked again. She opened the door in sweatpants and a paint-stained hoodie. Her face was pale, puffy. Her hair was tied in a knot that said she hadn't brushed it in days. She looked at me like I was a ghost she hadn't summoned. Hi, I said. Voice cracking. She didn't hug me, but she didn't shut the door either. So I stepped inside. Her apartment was dim and scattered. Dirty dishes, stacks of art supplies, half-done canvases on the floor. The air smelled like peppermint oil and dust. I didn't ask you to come, she said, arms crossed. I know. I didn't need you to pay the rent either. I nodded. Silence stretched between us like glass. Fragile, sharp, waiting to break. I found the binder, I said. And the diary. Her face turned crimson. She looked away. I didn't mean for you to. I didn't want. I know. I sat on the edge of the couch. It was stiff. Cold. I read everything. I continued. And I think I need to say something I've never said. She stared at me, lips tight. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry for every time I made you feel like love had conditions. I'm sorry for not protecting the bracelet. I'm sorry for trying to fix you when you just needed me to see you. Her chin trembled just a little. Then she whispered, I thought you hated me. My heart cracked open. I shook my head. Never. Not for a second. She sat next to me, not touching, but close. I was going to cut you off, she said. Completely. That was the plan. I had this whole revenge thing. Emotional, not like dramatic. Just gone. Like erasing you from my life. And now, I don't know. Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. I think I wanted to hurt you back, she said. For all the ways I felt invisible. I nodded. Sometimes we confuse justice with closure. She let out a soft laugh. Yeah. Then she handed me something. A small, frayed envelope. Inside was Grandma Lou's bracelet. I bought it back, she said. Pawn shop on 12th. Paid 3 times what you got for it. My throat tightened. I was going to mail it to you anonymously, she said. Part of the whole poetic justice thing. I held the bracelet in my palm like it was made of glass. Instead, I looked at her. You know, I whispered, I think maybe we both needed to break. She nodded. We didn't hug that day, or say anything cinematic. But before I left, she said, come back next week? And I said, yeah, I will. And somehow, that was more healing than any apology could ever be. The next week, I went back. I brought fresh sourdough, her favorite coffee, and the only thing I thought might break through the stiffness between us, a photo album I hadn't touched in 12 years. The kind with real photos, printed and glued onto pages with little handwritten captions like Maddie's 6th birthday, butterfly cake disaster, and first snow in the new house. She didn't touch the album at first, just stared at the crusty bread and said, You're turning this into a Hallmark movie, aren't you? I smiled. A low-budget one. She laughed. Then she opened the book. As she flipped through the photos, something shifted. Not dramatically. Not like in those sentimental montages where everyone cries and hugs. Just softened. Her fingers lingered on a picture of her in 3rd grade, missing 2 front teeth, holding up a spelling bee certificate. You made me memorize that whole damn list, she said. I did, I admitted. I bribed you with McDonald's. She turned another page. This one, she said quietly, is the last time I remember you looking at me like I was magic. It was a photo of us in the backyard. She was 10, barefoot and twirling in a blue dress. I was sitting on the porch, head tilted, eyes on her. I always looked at you like that, I said. She didn't answer. That night, I stayed in a nearby motel. I didn't want to impose. But the next morning, she called and asked if I could bring more coffee. From that place on Grant, she said. The one with the honey vanilla latte. It was the smallest thing. But I swear to you, it felt like Christmas. Over the next few weeks, we started stitching a rhythm. I came by every Sunday. Sometimes I brought food. Sometimes we just sat. Talked. Argued. Yes, we still argued. Mostly about memory. I was 15, she'd say. You said I looked bloated in that dress. I said the cut wasn't flattering. I'd insist. That's not the same. It is when you're 15. And she was right. Memory isn't neutral. It's tinted by pain, colored by context. But it also makes space for forgiveness if you let it. Then came the garage sale. It started as a practical thing. Her lease was ending. She was moving into a smaller place with a friend to save on rent. She invited me over to help sort through her stuff. Old clothes, canvas scraps, notebooks, junk drawers. Then we found a box, taped up, labeled, evidence. I looked at her. She looked away. Open it, she said. Inside were printed emails, birthday cards, receipts. Literal receipts. A Starbucks order from the day I missed her gallery opening. A birthday card I'd given her in 2017 that said, Hope you're thriving out there. The one she thought was cold. And a credit card statement showing a $125 withdrawal on the night she'd called sobbing after her breakup, and I told her I couldn't come because I had something important. I used that money to send you flowers, I said. You never got them? She blinked. No. I pulled out the statement. You thought I spent this on myself? She looked stunned. I was so mad, she whispered. I thought you just blew me off. It hit me then. She had built a case against me. A real, documented case. Because in her mind, that's how you stay safe. You collect the evidence. So when the hurt comes again, you can prove to yourself it wasn't your fault. That night, I stayed late. We burned some of the evidence in a little fire pit behind her building. She held up one page, stared at it, then tossed it into the flame. I used to think I'd show this all to a therapist someday, she said. Make them validate that I had a reason to cut you out. Do you still want to? She paused. No. Then she handed me a small receipt. The last thing in the box. It was from CVS. Dated 8 months ago. One item. Spiral notebook. $3.99. The diary. I bought this the night after we fought on the phone, she said. You probably don't even remember.
I did.
I told her, you act like I'm always the enemy, and hung up. She stared at the receipt. I was going to mail it to you one day. The diary. As proof. You'd read it and feel everything I felt. And now. She looked at me. Now I think it's ours. That Sunday we had brunch. In her kitchen. French toast, just like the one Tara had sliced through when she first told me about Maddie calling me controlling. Maddie set 2 plates down, sat, and asked, Did you know Grandma Lou kept a diary too? I raised an eyebrow. She did. She never gave it to anyone. But after she died, I found it in her sewing box. Read the whole thing. She reached into a drawer and pulled it out. Pale blue. Smelled like dust and lilac. Read page 17, she said. I flipped. She is so much like me it terrifies me. That sharpness. That independence. I love her fiercely. But I don't know how to soften. She was talking about you, Maddie said. I looked up. You think. I know. It hit me like a wave. The pattern. The echo. 3 generations of women trying to love, but not knowing how to say it without hurting each other first. That night, I wrote something for the first time in years. A letter. I didn't give it to Maddie. Not yet. But I wrote it so I could one day. It read, I don't want to be part of the pattern anymore. I want to build something new with you. One Sunday at a time. You don't owe me forgiveness. But I'll keep showing up until you know, really know, that I love you without conditions.
No leyer.
No performance. Just you. And me. And whatever we make next. The soft revenge, I realized, was this. Not yelling. Not exposing. But letting me sit in the silence of what I missed. Letting me piece it together slowly. Letting the truth be its own kind of justice. And now, I think she's letting me earn my way back. Not through grand gestures, but through quiet, repeated ones. The kind that rebuild trust. The kind that say, you don't have to keep score anymore. I'm not going anywhere. By early summer, the rhythm had returned. Not the old one, full of assumptions and silence. A new one, awkward at first. Fragile, but real. We still had disagreements. Still misread each other. But something had changed. There was space now. Not just for conversations, for truths. And for questions that used to feel too sharp to ask. One afternoon, we were walking through a second-hand bookstore off Damon Avenue. She pointed to a book on mother-daughter relationships, gave me a look and said, Too soon? I smirked. Too obvious. We didn't buy the book. But she picked out a used novel, and I bought it for her without saying anything. At the counter, the cashier looked at us and asked, You 2 sisters? Maddie burst out laughing. No, she said. We're complicated. It was the perfect answer. That summer, she painted again. For months, her supplies had sat untouched. But one Sunday, she asked if I'd help her reorganize her art nook. We unstacked canvases, cleaned old brushes, and made a new corner near her window. I think I want to do a series, she said. Something about women and memory. About what we remember wrong. Or what we think we remember right. You're going to make me cry, I said. Good, she replied. Then it's working. We still didn't talk much about the binder. It sat on my bookshelf now in the guest room. Not hidden, but no longer weaponized. Sometimes I'd glance at it and feel that old sting, the reminder of who I was, or who she believed I was. But mostly I saw it for what it became, a mirror. A painful, honest mirror. And honestly, I needed it. One day, she came to visit me in Indiana. First time in years. I had baked the banana bread again, and this time she ate 3 slices without saying a word. We sat on the porch, the cicadas humming like background static. I poured her iced tea and asked, Do you want to visit the storage unit with me? Her eyes narrowed. Storage unit? Yeah, I said. I've been clearing it out. Old bills, furniture, junk. But I think there's one box you might want. We drove over, dusty and quiet. The unit was a sweatbox, but she followed me without complaining. I pulled out a single plastic tub labeled Maddie's Things, 2008 to 2012. Inside, middle school trophies, dried corsages, a papier-mâché volcano, and a faded envelope. She opened it. Inside, an invoice. From a summer art camp. The camp she never went to. "What is this?" she asked, holding it up. "You got in," I said. "But we couldn't afford it. I told you it had been full."
Elite.
She looked at me.
Silent.
"I kept the invoice," I said, "because I wanted to remember what I couldn't give you." She folded the paper slowly, hands trembling. "You should have told me," she whispered. "I was ashamed," I admitted. She nodded. Didn't say anything more. But she slipped the invoice into her bag before we left. A week later, she Venmo'd me $3,500. Caption: back payment. For the art camp. And all the groceries you never billed me for. I called her, surprised. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said. "But I needed to." That was her way of making peace. Not with me. With herself. Later that month, we took a road trip. Small, just the two of us, a rental car, and a playlist that kept skipping between 90s R&B and sad girl indie. We stopped at antique shops, bookstores, gas stations with terrible coffee. At one point, she found a dusty glass bracelet, not unlike Grandma Lou's, and bought it without hesitation. She handed it to me and said, "For the version of you that couldn't keep the original." I didn't cry then. But that night, in a motel in Cincinnati, I opened the nightstand drawer and saw it again, sitting there quietly beside the TV remote.
And I wept.
Sometimes, I still wonder how close we came to losing each other completely. What if I hadn't found the binder? What if she had mailed the diary anonymously, and I just read it with fury instead of listening? What if we had both committed to being right instead of being real? There's a version of the story that ends in silence. That ends with birthdays skipped and grandchildren never met. A story where pride outweighs love. But that's not our story. Not anymore. Because here's the quiet truth. She did betray me. Not in the way I thought. Not with some cruel act, but with the withdrawal of trust. And I betrayed her, too. Not with my hands, but with my expectations. With my inability to make space for her pain when I was drowning in my own. But maybe that's what forgiveness is. Not erasing the betrayal, but acknowledging it together and choosing to stay anyway. Today, the binder sits beside her diary in a box we both labeled, half-jokingly, "Emotional Evidence, Declassified." We agreed it'll stay sealed unless one of us needs to remember. Not to reopen old wounds, but to remind ourselves how far we've come. And me? I'm learning that revenge, even soft revenge, doesn't always end in confrontation. Sometimes it ends with a Sunday brunch, with banana bread, with a single line written in a diary you were never meant to find. A line that says, "I love her. I just wish she loved me better." Now, every week I try to love her better. And not just in the ways I know how, but in the ways she needs.